Among the students of the Baal Shem Tov, there was one man who was both a Talmud Chacham and a Chassid, who was very, very wealthy. But no matter how much money he had, he was never happy. As a matter of fact, he kept working and working and working to get more money, because he thought, once I have more money, then I'm not going to have any worries anymore, and I could just live happily. But it never helped. He was always sad and worried. It was never enough. One time, he was about to travel on his long journey, and first he went to the Baal Shem Tov to get the Baal Shem Tov's bracha. The Baal Shem Tov asked him where he's going to and wished him success. But just as the Chassid was about to leave, what happened? The Rebbe called him back and said, "Surely on your way, you're going to pass through a little village, where in that village lived my beloved student, Reb Leib. Please be so nice and go there and send my regards and ask him how his health is." So this Chassid promised to do so and set off on his travels. He was very careful to keep his word to the Baal Shem Tov. He went to the village where Reb Leib lived and went to the Beis Medrash, saying, well, this would be a place that I'm going to find a holy rabbi who the Baal Shem Tov called one of his great students. So he walks into the Beis Medrash and he asks one man, where can I find the holy Reb Leib, the student of Baal Shem Tov? So the Gabbai tells him, I don't know any Reb Leib in town. So he asks someone else, and the guy says, I don't know any Reb Leib. Someone pipes up, maybe he means Leibke, the Yid who just sits behind the stove. So this merchant is now a bit confused, and he says, where can I find this Leibke? So the answer is probably in his usual place, sitting next to the stove. So the merchant went over. In the olden days, they had big brick ovens to keep the place hot. And he looks behind the stove, and he finds this man. And he looks like a very holy man. Reb Leib's eyes were burning with a hidden fire. And even though he looked like a simple man, clearly to the merchant, this was a hidden tzaddik who no one else in town recognized his greatness. Are you Reb Leib? Asked the rich man, approaching him. So the man answered simply, I'm called Leib. So the merchant tells him, the holy Baal Shem Tov sent me to you. Reb Leib jumped up. His eyes started shining and grabbed the chassid and says, really? You came from the Baal Shem Tov? Please come to my home, be my guest. Tell me all about what you saw of the Baal Shem Tov, about his greatness and how great of a tzaddik he is, how his light shines throughout the world. So the chassid says, who am I to speak of such a great tzaddik? But Reb Leib didn't let go. He said, you must tell me all about what you saw of the Baal Shem Tov. I beg of you. My soul is yearning to hear of this great tzaddik, the greatest of our generation. Surely you have things to tell if you've been around the Baal Shem Tov. Please come with me and join me for supper. I'd love to hear everything I can about the Baal Shem Tov. So the rich man couldn't say no to this eager Reb Leib and followed him to his home. When they went to his home, they walked past all the streets in town with the nice houses. And they walked past all the streets with regular houses. And soon they got down to the edge of town with the falling down shacks and hovels. But then they walked past that, and right at the edge of town, they got to a small, rubble-filled alley. And they followed this path and saw beside them a lonely little shack with holes in the walls, looking like it might collapse at any minute. The rich merchant had to bend over to get in through the doorpost without bumping his head. The duskness, and it was moist. It was a foul smell. The smell of mold inside the house. As this merchant walked inside to a small room, which was the living place of the entire family. And he kind of shivered as he watched his host. Reb Leib, meanwhile, lit a little candle, which showed some brightness in the dark of this small hovel. The rich man looked around and saw on the damp, sooty walls the wood boxes that they use for closets, and the little planks which they put on top of a few crates as beds. In the next room, he could see the faces of Reb Leib's wife and children sleeping, their faces looking slightly pale in the dim light. So Reb Leib says, come now, my honored guest, wash your hands for supper. The rich man couldn't refuse this hidden tzaddik, to whom the Baal Shem Tov specifically sent him. He washed his hands and sat down on a crate on the table. Reb Leib brought him a bowl of soup. You know what was in the soup? It was just some hot water, and that was it. A little bit of salt was added to make it a special delicacy. It took such a big effort for this rich man to overcome his disgust to eat some black bread and so-called soup. But he was very polite. But he watched Reb Leib. He couldn't understand how Reb Leib seemed to enjoy this meal so much. After the two of them had thanked Hashem for what they ate by benching, they sat down and talked for a long time, with the wealthy guest telling Reb Leib all different things he saw by the Baal Shem Tov and the wondrous ways and teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. And Reb Leib sat there, swallowing up every precious word that came out of the mouth of the merchant. Reb Leib's sparkling eyes, which never left his guest's mouth for a second, seemed to bite up every word. It was already late at night when Reb Leib left his seat to prepare his guest's bed. He gave him the nicest bed in the house. You know what that was? It was a hard plank of wood with some old rags on top as a blanket. And he says, Reb Leib says, I'm sorry that this is a poor fare for my honored guest, but I hope that you'll enjoy a restful sleep. The rich man smiled and nodded to acknowledge that his host was really trying his best. The rich man did not enjoy his sleep. He tossed and turned all night, and his bones were aching the next day. He secretly wished he could finally leave from Reb Leib and his miserable tiny hut and go to maybe catch a nice sleep in a good hotel. When Reb Leib gave him a cup of tea in the morning, the guest drank it and said his morning prayers, and the merchant shook Reb Leib's hand and said, thank you so much for having me, and I'm going to be on my way. Reb Leib walked him out, showed him great honor by walking him to the door. And just as he's about to leave, the guest said, wait a second. Reb Leib, please can you explain something to me? I've been wondering all this time I've known you. How can you live in such terrible poverty, in such dire circumstances? How can you be so poor? If you're such a dear and loved by the Baal Shem Tov and you're one of his dearest students, to the point that he specifically sent me here to give you his regards and ask how you are, why doesn't the Baal Shem Tov help you? Surely his Chassidim could get together some funds and support you and help you a little bit. I can't understand how you keep living with such a little amount of food and with such terrible, broken down, decrepit surroundings. So Reb Leib looks at his guest with laughing eyes and asks his guest in return, tell me, my friend, what's your house like? How do you live? So the merchant says, well, that's what a question, you know? You can't even compare. I live a life of luxury. I have a beautiful house with big windows full of fresh air and sunshine. I have beautiful furniture, which are imported, made of the best materials. My beds are soft and covered in white linen and down covers. It's nothing like this. So Reb Leib asks him, really, if that's so, I really wonder how you were able to survive tonight. I don't understand how you could overcome all your feelings of how uncomfortable you were to be able to eat my food and sleep on my bed. So the man shrugged his shoulders and explained, no, when you're traveling, you have to get used to your accommodations because they're only short-term discomforts. Because, you know, I'm just passing through. So Leib tells him, well, if that's the case, then I can tell you a secret. I actually also have a very large mansion full of riches and gold and silvers that's worth so much more than your own house. What? Said the rich man. His eyes were wide, his mouth was open, he was shocked. How's that possible? Where are you, and why would you live in such a broken down hut if you have a beautiful mansion? So Reb Leib tells him, they're not here, my friend. They're above in Shemayim, in heaven. There awaits me my portion in the world to come. And over there I'm lacking nothing. But the rich man started laughing. Really, Reb Leib? Here in this world you don't own a thing. So Reb Leib says, what does it matter? When you're traveling, you have to make do with what you have. I'm only just passing through. But when I get to the true world, then I'll have everything I need. The wealthy man had learned a big lesson. Now he understood why the Baal Shem Tov sent him to Reb Leib, because he had learned really his lesson, and from that moment his life was changed.